Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to First Cut. This is our review, our spoiler review, actually, of the new Matrix movie, The Matrix Resurrections. I am here with Robert Butler III. We are two massive, self-proclaimed big Matrix fans. I know we both grew up with the films. We've done a couple episodes on it on our past podcast episodes. I've been very transparent saying how much this movie means to me, how much the first movie means to me, and how much the trilogy itself means to me. So it was kind of a wild moment when it's finally here, RB3, the new Matrix movie is here, and we're going to be talking all about it in our spoiler review. Before we get into the movie, man, I gotta say, we've talked a lot about leading up to it. I can't lie, leading up to the premiere of this movie, and by premiere, I meant I went and saw it the day it came out in theaters. I chose to do it like that. I didn't have any other viewing option, unlike a lot of other people who might have gotten screenings or stuff like that. But there was already kind of this mixed reaction, not only to the movie itself, but the idea behind making another Matrix movie. Did you hear anything through the grapevine before jumping in that may have colored your way you viewed this movie, or no?
I mean, I didn't really look at Rotten Tomatoes or anything. I usually try to avoid
or Twitter,
internet, and all that.
That's
yeah, just because Twitter. Yeah, I just try to avoid all of that stuff because they will mess up give you some preconceived notions or whatever. So I just kind of stayed offline. But then, I also saw it in theaters.
Nice.
Well, I didn't see it on Wednesday. I saw it the Thursday, so day after it came out. So yeah, I mean, it's it was definitely good. Like going in with that fresh mindset, only really watching the trailer. So
I really do feel like that might be a part of it too. But let's just do it, man. I want to get your overall thoughts on this movie. I'll give you mine as well as my background in this movie. But first, give me your thoughts, man. You saw it in theaters, so it must have been an experience for you. How was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I actually really enjoyed it. Surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, I guess I actually really dug it. And it's funny because you're talking about like the expectations of making the Matrix 4, and that's kind of what the movie, at least initially, kind of drills into in like a kind of metatextual kind of way. And I think the way it approaches the idea of the Matrix and kind of its like self-referential like aspects of it, I think that's probably the most creative aspect that they made that they've added to this chapter of the film. I mean, obviously we've seen like movies like Space Jam and like all this stuff like touch into the world of like meta-isms and like Warner Brothers being like the corporate overlords and stuff. But it's just kind of funny seeing a new Matrix film do that, while also kind of giving like a new kind of flip to the hero's journey story. I mean, it's the same hero's journey story that we've seen like throughout like a lot of history, but there's some turns and subversions here and there that's really funny. That's really fun and interesting. So overall, I dug it and I thought it was interesting. It's not like the best movie ever, nor is it like some piece of groundbreaking cinema like the original Matrix, but it's really good and entertaining. So
yeah, I think part of my enjoyment of this movie, I'm also, full disclosure for anyone who follows me on Twitter, I enjoyed this movie as well. I felt relieved, man, because I did hear a lot of mixed responses coming out of the premiere of this movie, out of the first screening. A lot of tweets being like, oh no, what is this movie, and all this kind of stuff. And I read a lot of stuff about the tone and how it took a little bit more of a lighter, goofier tone. And I thought it was going to be like just too much. And I definitely felt that the first half, but the first half is purposefully too much. Lana is doing that very much on purpose, putting you inside kind of this over-the-top, ridiculous video game world, or almost like a parody of our world. But if that was the whole film itself, I definitely would have been very mixed on it, but it wasn't. It was very much to introduce you into what they're going to try and do with this movie with the meta commentary. But eventually we do get obviously out of the Matrix, and we do get to see what the real world is like now that Neo has been awoken after the next 60 years, because he's been inside this new version of the Matrix for the past 60 years. I'm relieved, man. I really am relieved, because I really do feel like the core of the Matrix stories are there, which is kind of the commentary, right? Whether it's commentary on art itself, on media itself, on just humanity and how much more we've become a little bit more bitter and a little bit too reliant on our own idea of consumerism and feelings and comfort, and how if in the real world now, maybe back in 1999 it wasn't always the case, but in the real world now, if we were told if we want to live in the matrix or not, a lot of people, if not most of the people of humanity, would probably be like, yeah, I'm down. Just put me in the matrix. I don't want to be in the real world. I don't want to see the harshness of what the real world is like, because a lot of people like having that comfort. And we do get a lot of that commentary, especially with the character of the analyst, and especially with the character of Niobe, who we meet again, Jada Pickett Smith. Shout out to Jada Pickett Smith, who reprises her role, kind of representing kind of this hardened soul, this bittered, older version of a Niobe who has seen how the Matrix has softened humanity up so much to the point that it feels like it's just, humanity is just not worth fighting for, because there's just no more hope left, because the Matrix is just so good at keeping them blue-pilled that it's almost better to just, you know what, this is what we got. We're just going to live with what we got. And eventually we get inspiration from the younger generation, which is obviously the character of Bugs, Captain Bugs, played by Jessica Henwick, who represents the newer generation who is inspired by Neo to pick up the mantle and to do something new. So I just really do love that there is something new there, which is all about the younger generation and which is about feeling that inspiration of the Matrix. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was interesting as well. I mean, I think it's the same approach that Ryan Johnson took to the Star Wars, to the Last
Super
Jedi.
similar, very similar,
Yeah,
about
like
being the symbol, about Luke being an inspiration. It's very
Yeah.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's, I think that's interesting, because I think that is real life to what a lot of people interpret from these characters. Like people really have posters of Neo, like real people in like real life in 2021, like have pictures of Neo in their bedroom and like literally see him as like Jesus or whatever. Like, and that's what they talk about all throughout this film too. Like, how the people of Ion, not Zion, Ion, are still
Io.
Io, my bad. Io are still holding on to that belief of him and that same legend of him. And he can't even live up to that expectation of himself. He can't even remember how to fight all the way. He can't even remember how to fly. Like, he can't do all the stuff that, made Neo. So then who's gonna step up and take that plate? And I think that's just like a fascinating question too,
That was such a good scene because we see the statue of Morpheus, and we see Niobe give her speech talking about how great Morpheus is and how he was always a great man and elected lead counselor, grand council member.
Yeah,
and
high
yet,
chair of the council.
High chair of the council. And yet he just kept saying, we'll have faith in Neo. He'll figure it out. We'll have faith in Neo. And it's like, if faith can only get you so far. You have to have faith, but then you have to put in new actions, new work, new ideas, new generations, new strategies to be implemented, and not just rely on the legend, on the faith, on the past, and look towards the future and look towards the newer generations. I love that aspect. I thought it was a really cool read on the character of Morpheus, for sure. But let's talk about how this movie starts out, man. How'd you feel about that new version of the Matrix that they placed everyone in? And it's kind of inspired, at least in the middle act, we see that it was inspired by Neo himself to have this more digital video game, what did the analyst say in his monologue, like fiction not facts kind of world. And that's how the new version of the Matrix is, almost as a commentary obviously on our real world. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I thought that part was interesting. It's funny because you're saying that a lot of people didn't like how light the first half of the movie was. I kind of thought that was like refreshing to me. Like I kind of like was like laughing at like his ignorant friends like Jude and the therapist, like all constantly gaslighting him like all throughout like every single session. You're just like, dude, like come on, this dude's clearly lying to you. Like, come on, wake up, Neo. Taking those blue pills with the had giant pill bottom, like, bro. So it's like that stuff is like, yeah, obviously it's comfortable being in that Matrix world, but even that montage that they show with like when they're playing the White Rabbit song, and it's just them talking about developing the ideas of like a Matrix 4, and it's literally the same actor saying the exact same lines, but multiple times in like different shirts to imply that they're just saying this is like a loop. Like this is every day for like a week that they've been having like this conversation, the exact same convo. And that's like mind numbing. So I can't even imagine, like, I'm glad that, he stopped taking those pills. I'm also glad that we had Jessica Chadwick's character. What was her? I mean, Bugs. Yeah, we
Yeah,
saw
Bugs
her.
Bunny.
Yeah. We saw her. We saw her like escape from that
Yeah.
from that world too, and bring Morpheus. I mean, also I think I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but like the collaboration between the machines and the humans. I think that's also like another fascinating addition to the mythology. But I think that just also furthers. I think it furthers. I think it further adds to the movie's like overall goal of showing that like what we knew from the first Matrix, like from the first Matrix trilogy, in terms of like the war and all that stuff. We're pretty much like not throwing it out the window, but this is like a completely new chapter. We're gonna see like new versions of the same characters, but also like new beliefs, new like all this other stuff. So it's just like it's a fascinating balance that Lana had to crack here.
I loved it, man. To be honest, as soon as we get the scene of Bugs and her team breaking Neo out of the Matrix once again, and eventually we do get Neo out of the Matrix, I actually got emotional, man. And obviously, I got emotional because I'm a massive fan of these movies, but I got emotional because I really do see. I remember watching the first three movies and seeing what Neo meant, because I did feel a lot like Neo. And Neo, when he breaks out of the Matrix, feels a little bit like, what was it all for? What was the point? And then it takes Bugs talking to him and telling him like, hey, the point is a change of perspective, a change that's created inside a younger generation, not just your connection to humanity, but your connection to these programs and these sentient programs and these other versions of artificial intelligence who also want to break against the system and who also want to push back against the architect and the analyst. And we meet them in the forms of, I'm going to forget names, but Sebebe is one, I know for sure. And then Kujaka and obviously Sati, who we meet in the past versions of the Matrix. She's the little girl in Matrix Revolutions. And her father we meet as Ramachandra, who's a program engineer, who's actually literally artificial intelligence. So we've seen this type of stuff in the Matrix before in previous versions, but we see that Neo's relationship with these programs has created almost a union or a cooperation between machines and man. And that's kind of a refreshing take, because I love Niobe's commentary on the idea of not just war, resistance, but also cooperation, and how that can change inside a person's perspective, and how that can lead to a new version of humanity that has a lot more hope. I thought that was such a cool commentary that Lana Wachowski put in there.
Yeah, I thought there was like a lot of interesting commentary. I think there's a lot of commentary on age as well. I thought that was from Niobe's
huge.
Yeah, for
On
Niobe's
generations.
perspective. Yeah. I mean, obviously age 60 years, but that's something she holds bitter to Neo, like, the fact that he aged. Even with Trinity, that scene when they're talking about the Matrix game, the Matrix video game, and then she's saying how she showed her imaginary husband like the game lady, and her husband like laughed, like as if that was like based on the same person. Like, yeah, that is messed up. I'm sure that's something that Plexi, I like how personal this movie felt too. That's why I think like it felt personal. It felt like something, I felt like it would have been easy for a movie, especially like Matrix, to have fallen into some Reddit theories, like to have done like the Animatrix, like a live action version of it, or just done something that was like derivative or something that fans really wanted. But this is actually like the first kind of new sequel-ish movie that kind of like almost felt like anti-fan service a little bit. And I think that comes all the way down to the ending of revealing that Neo's like not the actual like one in this new iteration. How the whole chase is to actually free Trinity, because they free Neo and he's not able to do nothing. He's kind of just like a waste of potatoes, a waste of potato sack. He's just adding weight to the ship. But when they find Trinity is when they really have like the flying power, like all this other like cool stuff. And now we're setting off into a new chapter that's like probably going to be really exciting. So that's the part that I'm like, I appreciate that it's not like some fan servicey kind of thing. It's something a little bit different.
Yeah, I really did appreciate the idea of the commentary on growing old, and how when you get older, you do tend to get a little bit more bitter, and you do tend to use your own ideas and to place your own ideas and implement that on other people. and kind of push that on other generations. And I felt that obviously in the form of Niobe, but also inside the Matrix when it comes to the analyst and his commentary and what he talks about as far as feelings and fiction and how people use their own ideas to justify anything they want to do. And I felt like that was obviously a harsh commentary on everyone who's used the Matrix as their own version to justify whatever they want to justify. And obviously Bugs in the movie as well also says that, where she says they use your own story to justify their own ideas and to weaponize your own story, to use that against you and to use it as their own form of a story and to use it as their own form of a weapon, as their own tool. And I was like, man, that's really clever commentary as far as how people have viewed the Matrix in the past and used it to justify some pretty stupid theories and analogies that it's been used. What do you think of that?
I thought that was funny. I think there's that one scene where like all the writers of the video game were like, oh, like what does the Matrix represent? Trans rights, corporate exploitation, something else. I'm kind of thinking, did Lana listen to the Meaning Up podcast and like grab at least a couple of our bullet points? I hope that's what she did. She probably didn't. She probably like came up with that off the top. But I at least like would hope that maybe like she stumbled across
any podcast.
Or any podcast, I guess, points that out, sure. But I just think that's funny. Like, I imagine Lana Wachowski, like
watching our video.
Yeah, watching our video, watching any like video essay about the Matrix, and like, maybe that was what this was about. I was just writing a movie back then, you know?
Yeah. So. But I really did feel that commentary. I thought it was a beautiful comment that Buck said about, you know, using this type of story against other groups of people and how that's very harsh. And obviously, I just love the idea of having hope and how that's something that, as simple as that is, you know, the analyst in this movie has a line where he says hope and despair have the same formula or something like that. I just watched it, so obviously I don't know the exact line, but he says basically it's like the same formula, hope and despair, but how hope is still there regardless of how humanity has become so much more lived in the Matrix and so much more obsessed and addicted to their own pills, hooked on their own medicine, as Morpheus says in this movie, to the point now where, you know, Shepard says it in this movie, that where the Matrix essentially won. Most of humanity wants to be blue-pilled and they want to stay. And yet how Neo and Trinity represent that bond that shows a free mind. And he even says at the end of the movie, let's show them what a free mind can do. Let's inspire them. Let's put rainbows in the damn sky, as they say, and try to inspire them, which again goes back to the whole Luke Skywalker thing, obviously, as far as, you know, the power of inspiration and how that can lead to younger generations picking up the mantle. And I really do feel like that's something that's a very beautiful commentary and story. And obviously how it leads to Trinity realizing her own potential as well. I thought that was really cool. What do you think of Trinity in this whole thing, especially towards the third act?
I like Trinity in this movie. I mean, obviously they gave her a lot. She's kind of like the main centerpiece, I feel like, of the entire story. And I appreciated that. Carrie-Anne Moss obviously killed it in her return back into the role. Didn't miss a beat. And I think honestly, she kind of carried it for even more than like Keanu for a lot of parts for me. So I thought the performance was great. I thought her character, like seeing her kind of eventually make those slow steps to like breaking out and like having her power. And honestly, there was like that scene, which I still don't really like fully understand what happened, but I guess like Bugs have plugged into Trinity, I guess, and then like she got like some new powers. I don't really know what that was all about, but yeah, that was dope stuff. Everything all around was just really cool for character.
I love the idea of making I just love the idea of the programs, of the sentient programs. I thought that was such a clever thing. Again, as I said before, we saw that in Reloaded. We saw that in Revolutions, obviously with the Merovingian, with Ramachandra, and the Merovingian, we see him again in this movie as well, obviously. But I really do like that idea of that cooperation and how we've seen it before, again, RB3, in how many, sci-fi stories that we've reviewed in this damn podcast.
Right.
Westworld, Devs, Like how many versions of the story have we seen where we get to see the same person, but it's a program version, or it's an AI version, or it's a copy version.
Right.
And we see that in the form of Matrix with Yahya
Morpheus.
Abdul-Mateen.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about his performance in his version of basically program Morpheus?
He was good too. I mean, I felt like he wasn't really like doing that much in terms of like what he was doing. I mean, you know, he was basically playing like the Lawrence, like continuation of the Lawrence Fishburne character.
Yeah.
I do kind of wish they would have given him like a little bit more, but I do think the concept of his character being like a program that's just a recreation, that's kind of trapped in the Matrix, like, and he can't really get out. So they have to use that like the weird like
Machine.
It's like the I want to keep saying metallic.
Magnetic. They called it a magnetic something. Magnetic.
Paramagnetic. Something. Interesting stuff though with that too. So yeah, it was really good. I liked his character, but I would like to see more. And he was handing up a little whooping to Neo in the beginning to encourage him to fight. And I'm like, yo, this is cool, but like, what if he actually dies? Like, what if Neo can't wake up out of this? So it was good to see. Good to see that though.
I really love that concept, man. The idea of taking a physical form in the real world and how a machine can do that, or how a program can do that, where it's a sentient program. So like obviously they have consciousness. Like her. And how do they take a physical form? And obviously we see that in the form of that magnetic pool formulating a human body. And obviously we see that as well with creatures like Sababy and Kujaka when it comes to Sati, who that's her physical form in the real world as well. I thought that was a really clever, cool way to express how programs want to help humanity and want to join in with them. There's so many commentary in this movie, man, that I really did feel like it was beautiful in the sense of how Lana wants to talk about empowerment, how humanity, as difficult as it may have been these past 20 years, and how we've seemed to have gotten more and more plugged into our own system, how there's still a possibility of us breaking out of it and still trying to find inspiration and trying to find hope in humanity, and to look towards the future, and to look and put our feet on solid ground and put our feet in the real world, not because it's easy, but because it is hard, but because cooperation and working together and community is still something that's valuable, as much as it is difficult to accept, because we see the pessimistic side of humanity so much more and more with the news and with the media and with obviously everything that's going on in the political world. It's difficult, but at the same time, there's still a chance for humanity to try and look towards the horizon, and how Neo and Trinity's love represents that as a bond that can reach beyond the real world and the Matrix. So I just felt like that message was just so strong that I felt like, regardless of anything else in the movie that might have been, pacing issues or a couple of action scenes that I was like, all right, that's okay. I just felt like if that core is there, that might be the strongest point for me.
Yeah, Jonathan Groff can't leave the review without shouting out Jonathan Groff as
who's the standout for you, man, in this movie? Is it him? Is it Jonathan Groff?
Yeah, I mean, I love Jonathan Groff, man. I love seeing him in anything. And it was fun seeing him like turn against Neil Patrick Harris's character too. Yeah. Neil Patrick Harris was surprisingly like good in this too, so good seeing him in that as well. But yeah,
my favorite was definitely Jessica Henwick as Bugs. I thought that was a kind of another, I don't know. I mean, obviously she says it in the movie where she literally says, I'm named after Bugs Bunny. But that's another WB.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
She's like, what? Bugs Bunny, bro. It's just go with it.
They're going.
What'd you think of that tone, man? The tone of having a couple more jokes in there, a little bit more of a lighter tone when it comes to Jonathan Groff Smith and obviously Neil Patrick Harris, analyst, who he's supposed to be a little bit more of the architect, but a much more funnier, quirkier architect, I guess. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, I didn't mind it. I didn't hate it. Like, I thought it was like not bad. I mean, I could personally like, I hope it doesn't like, I hope if these movies, it seems like they're clearly establishing a new trilogy or a new series or like more new chapters. It ended almost like in the same way Dune ended, like with the promise of like more. So I definitely feel like we're gonna see more stories. I just hope that if the stories do continue on and it does get like more we do get something more serious like later on down the line if the stakes are getting risen up. I mean, I do think like, it's good tone on this, but like the Wachowski sisters, they play a little too loose and foul with their tone sometimes. We're all looking at you, Jupiter Ascending, So like if it don't get too crazy, too jokey, where we're seeing, bees like levitating, Mila Kunis, like and Eddie Redmayne, Oscar-winning Eddie Redmayne shouting all these ridiculous lines. Don't get to that, but stay within like this lane, and I think you're in a good spot,
That's what I was worried about, man. I definitely I read a couple, comments and tweets that said this movie was so over the top and so I heard the word goofy a lot. Goofy, silly, ridiculous. And I was like, damn, really? And I was kind of worried going in. So, maybe part of my review is a relief that there was still so much love there. It's almost like a little love letter towards what the Matrix represents and how we can change what we saw in the past. Obviously, with Niobe, Io instead of Zion, I was at the verge of tears when they were coming towards when he was like, "Is this Zion?" And I was like, "Oh my God, are we going to see Zion again?" Like, call me a sucker for the sequels, but I just love the idea of that city and Zion and coming together and Link being like, "There's no place like home." Obviously, it's just a really cool pleasure for me. So seeing the city coming together and then realizing that humanity is still alive because of Neo was a very emotional aspect for me. And it had those heartstrings there. And I felt that, and I'm glad they didn't, just point to the camera and do jokey joke the whole time, because otherwise I would have been put off quite a bit. But I did feel like there was a lot of heart there, especially towards the second half of the film. So I felt like it was properly handled, especially with what they were going for in the first half, which was kind of this, over the top, ridiculous video game creator kind of world. We even see the Game Award trophy. I was like, that's the Game Awards.
Nice.
It was ridiculous. I was like, this is so funny.
It's funny. I thought they were going to be more of, I thought it was going to be more of, what was I gonna say? I thought there was gonna be a movie. Like from the trailers, I thought they were gonna do like a movie adaptation. But it's interesting seeing it. But it's also interesting seeing how they didn't really like do a game. Like they didn't really show the game. Like they didn't really explain like what the game like really is that much.
Sure.
Is it like VR? Is it like? But I think there's
like
really
Uncharted or like The Last of Us, I guess.
Yeah. But also, I guess like. That's also like they don't need that explanation because like I'm sure like there's really no game, like this is all part of the code, all part of the language. Like they just dropped them into that particular moment in time. So I don't know, interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah, I just feel like the core of the film is very strong, and I felt like that connection between Neo and Trinity is so strong that it worked for me. It worked. The sparks flying, the powers when they come together, the dyad in the Force, to quote Rise of Skywalker, the Raylo connection of it all. It really worked for me, man. It really did. Call me a sucker. I was like, damn, this is a love story that I'm buying into. And it's by two very quiet, soft-spoken actors, Carrie-Anne Moss and obviously Keanu Reeves. These aren't, massive, huge, over-the-top personalities. These are very two quiet, soft-spoken, kind of quirky souls coming together, and I love it. I love their connection, and I love the idea, as cheesy as it is, as how their love really is how the one becomes powerful, and it's not just one together, but it's actually both of them together. Again, going back to the Raylo dyad and the Force kind of thing. Call me a sucker. It's a Star Wars thing in me, man. I love that. I was like, oh, damn, they're doing it. They're doing the Raylo. Right. I thought that was cool, man. Any criticisms you want to toss out before we overpraise this movie?
I mean, criticisms. I don't know if I have like
not too many, right?
There's not like it's not like a criticism. I just gotta say it's not like it doesn't do that much like new, like there's no like they kind of joke about like one character kind of jokes like we need a new bullet time, crazy, like experimental. And I'm glad they wasn't chasing like some weird new trick or some weird new cinematic element. But like at the same time, it does feel like it could fit into like any modern blockbuster that is out like today, essentially. And that's what, that's we talk about all the time. I say it with Blade Runner, I say it with like all these mad movies that have come out mad long time ago. The influence of the first Matrix was so impactful that we saw the rest of cinema take that influence and run with it to the point now where we see the sequel coming 20 some odd years later. It doesn't feel as fresh. Like we've seen the bullet time, we've seen the slow-mo, we've seen the gun fu. Like we've seen even Keanu Reeves do it in different movies with John Wick. So it almost feels like...
We saw the director of John Wick.
Right.
You see him?
Is he in this? No, I didn't see that. No. Oh, he
plays Trinity's husband in The Matrix. That's him.
Oh, that's Chad? He's Chad?
Yeah, Chad.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Chad Stahelski, or I think that's how you say his name. He plays Chad in this movie.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh,
that's funny, right?
That. Oh, that is funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, that's cool. But yeah, I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, there's no qualms. Like, it's not like a criticism towards it. But I do think like, I think if people, like I walked out of it and there's like mad people who are like, oh, it sucked or it wasn't that good. And I'm like, if it was a good story. Like it's definitely a good story that was well told. I just don't think people were going into it thinking it was going to be a lot of upside down shots or some sort of new revolutionary kind of,
or like an action set piece that kind of like blew everyone's mind. Kind of like,
or the second one.
Or the second one.
Yeah,
the second one is still gnarly. Or even the third one. The third one had the crazy Superman fight, but no one liked it.
CGI.
I felt like I agree with you, but at the same time, I felt like there's enough new there in the world. The idea of creature machines working together with humanity, that's new. The idea of artificial intelligence coming into the real world, that's new. The idea of bioluminescent lights in the sky, that's kind of cool. That's kind of new. All that stuff to me was cool and new in a way that sold me enough to the idea of no phone booth and just using mirrors as portals. And they kept calling them portals. I was like, this is kind of cool. It's like Portal, the video game. So I thought that kind of stuff is enough to get me excited to see any other potential future stories or stuff like that, where I was like, there's enough new here to where I could see like, machine and man teaming up versus machine and man, or like this cool, you can make a million stories out of that. And there's enough new stuff there to where it's just refreshing enough for you to be excited for the future, especially with new characters like Bugs and like Lexi or Shepard or any other captain that was in the movie. I think there's enough there for sure. Maybe not action set pieces, but definitely with story beats and inside the world. I thought that was kind of cool. Kind of like how the Star Wars does it too, because they always introduce a new version of the Force or a new Force power. I think that's always a cool thing to do. So yeah, man. Cool, man. Any other thoughts before we step away?
No, that's all I got. Hopefully I'll check it out in theaters.
Go see it in theaters. Go see it in theaters. As much as it is risky now, we know it's risky, but if you can, wear the mask and just go see it in theaters, because it's worth it. It's worth it for sure. So we both enjoyed it. I'm excited that you enjoyed it, man. I just feel like Lana Wachowski is a great visionary director. Obviously, shout out to Lily as well. Lana and Lily created one of my favorite franchises of all time, one of my favorite films of all time in the first one. And I'm just happy to know that it's in good hands when it comes to their hands, because I'm just happy and relieved that the movie has so much more of the core themes and stories and messages that is inside the Matrix films of the past is now here in the present. So I appreciate it so much more. Thanks again, guys, for watching our review for First Cut. RB3, where can everyone find you?
Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Director RB3.
And you can find me on Twitter at Squad Leader Ace. Make sure you guys follow us at First Cut TMO on Twitter and Instagram as well. Make sure you guys subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you guys leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought of the film as well. You don't have to like it if you didn't like it as well. What was your favorite moment, favorite crew member, favorite character? Anything you want to give a shout out to in the comments down below. We will be reading those comments. So hopefully they are positive, cool comments. Either way, guys, for the First Cut crew and the Matrix crew,
Only one can remain. It's either me or you. Only one can remain. It's either me or you. Take you out the equation. It's either me or you. You do the math.